Hello again. So I hope everybody had a chance to get a refresher and make themselves comfortable for the next and final presentation for today's workshop, our closing keynote. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Dr. Ben Shneiderman. For those of you that it's highly unlikely that you're not familiar with Ben's work. He's an emeritus distinguished university professor in the Department of Computer Science. He's a founding director of the Human-Computer Interaction Laboratory at the University of Maryland in Delaware. He's a member of the Institute for Advanced Computer Studies at the University of Maryland. And in line, similar to our industry keynote, he has received too many accolades to recite here. I'll just mention a few. He's a fellow of the AAAS, of the ACM, IEEE, and NAI. He's a member of the National Academy of Engineering in recognition of his pioneering contributions to HCI and InfoViz. And his widely used contributions include the clickable highlighted web links, high-precision touchscreen keyboards for mobile devices, and tagging for photos. Ben's information visualization innovations include dynamic query sliders for Spotfire, development of tree maps for viewing hierarchical data, novel network visualizations for NodeXL that many of us use, and event sequence analysis for e-health records or electronic health records. He is a lead author of designing the user interface book, Strategies for Effective HCI. And among the publications, and of course, we have the most recent article that was published in the most recent issue of the Transactions on Human-Computer Interaction. That is a flagship journal of our SIG. And we're going to hear a fantastic talk this afternoon. And again, I will extend Ben the same courtesy of having extra time for questions. You don't need to hear me as much in the business meeting. So again, take your time to submit questions in the Q&A and upvote the ones you'd like, and I'll pose them, I'll moderate them at the end. With that, please join me in welcoming Ben to the stage.
Okay, there. Can you see me?
We can see you.
Okay, good to see you too. Thank you for that generous and kind institution, Konstantinos. Introduction to Konstantinos. I'm very happy to be part of AIS SIG HCI and the pre-ISIS workshop again. And I have a long history with ISIS and with AIS and AMSIS and related conferences. I'm pleased that the paper you mentioned appears in the current issue of the AIS Transactions on Human-Computer Interaction. I'm very pleased to be there. It's volume 12, and my first paper was in volume 1, and that paper over these years has received more than 10,000 downloads. So it's I just encourage you to all take a look at the Transaction HCI as a great place to publish, because it has a great editor-in-chief. Fiona Na has been very devoted and works hard to make great papers and to get them out there. So this is a great community, and thank you for including me in this event.
You're welcome to share your screen. Exactly.
All right, let me go to share. And let's see where I am. Get you up here. And let me start the presentation. Let's see. All right. Do you see?
Yes, we see and hear you. Wonderful.
Okay. Great. Okay. So as Constantino said, I've long been a leader in the world of HCI, and now we're moving to the new world of HCAI. The paper in the Transactions of HCI is about 3 fresh ideas, and I'm going to focus on some of them, particularly bridging the gap between ethics and practice, the current issue. As you can see, I'm at the University of Maryland. I'm emeritus professor there, but I'm spending the year in British Columbia and connected with the University of British Columbia's Peter Wall Institute. So happy to be here. I'm always proud to wave the flag of the Human Computer Interaction Lab at the University of Maryland, a group I started many years ago, now on its 8th director, Nicholas Elmquist. It's a happy collaboration between computer science and College of Information Studies with other departments, including the wonderfully titled Maryland Institute for Technology in the Humanities. Our website has more than 1,000 tech reports, 200 projects, and lots of great work. On our annual symposium draws hundreds of people now virtually. Some of you may know me from the book Designing the User Interface, first edition 1986, but the 6th edition here tells the story of this very high impact discipline of user interface, user experience design. And the book covers the theories and the practical methods that make this field so influential throughout the world, with 6 billion users or 3 million apps on mobile devices. As Konstantinos mentioned, my early work that gained recognition and had high impact was the idea of web links, that certain words are highlighted in light blue, we found was the right color rather than bright red, which was more visible but disrupted people's scanning and reading of the text. So that idea of light blue is what Tim Berners-Lee picked up and cited in his 1989 manifesto for the web, and then its subsequent implementation. The tiny touchscreen keyboards were also what we developed, from 9-inch touchscreen keyboards down to 7 to 5 to 3 inches. And this rough image from a video we shot was done because reviewers of a paper did not believe that we could do this. Things have changed a lot, and the 3-inch screen with touchscreen has become a very normal thing. Steve Jobs visited our lab in 1988 and saw our touchscreen work. I became a consultant for Apple for 5 years, and so I see how those things have transferred. And finally, the idea of photo tagging. I hold a patent on tagging of photos, which has been widely used on many applications. But the bulk of my work, those three are really great to talk about because everybody knows about them. But the bulk of my work has been on visualization methods. Spotfire was based on academic research and company formed in 1997, grew to 200 people and was purchased in 2007, remains active and a leading tool. But successors such as Tableau, our colleagues from Stanford, have made a great success and brought a wonderful product to wide markets. And they share the notion of multiple coordinated windows, where sliders on the right-hand side. As you move the sliders, it updates all the windows, even if there are millions of items in the data set. So it does it dynamically, and those issues of dynamic queries and brushing and linking, multiple window coordination have remained stable parts of the visualization community. My development of tree maps, here is an application. This shows the status of the market the day after the US election a few weeks ago, and there are 11 industry groups, and the capitalization, market cap for each company is shown by its size. So Apple is the big one, but Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook are also big. They're green because they've risen substantially overnight. And you can see some sectors did poorly this day. They're red because that shows they're declining. And so you get to understand that, and you get to see the exceptions. On a green sector, there's some red spots as well. So it reveals information, and tree maps became a part of Excel in 2014. So they've traveled very widely. Our work on Node XL contributed to Node XL visualization, the most widely used network analysis tool, especially for social media network analysis. It's embedded in Excel, but new versions allow it to stand separately and getting built into Microsoft's Power BI and is widely used. The book for this tool is now in 2nd edition and remains widely used, especially for teaching a lot in business schools. I hope some of people in the AIS community, the SIG HCI, will pick up on that. It's a great tool for adding to courses about social media network analysis. And finally, our work on event flow was for patient histories and how to understand the patterns of care. Here we showed the treatment was only correct for about half of the patients in this sample, and that the 29 ways in which the protocols were violated were shown in the screen below. So that's where we've been. My book may interest some of you in this community. It's called The New ABCs of Research. It's a guide for junior researchers about how to make successful work, especially by partnering in industry. I was pleased to see Mary Cherwinski talk about it, and Konstantinos and others in this community. I think there's great opportunities these days for working with business colleagues and partners in research. It turns out those papers that are done where academics have one or more collaborator from industry or hospitals or so on, those papers have 4 to 8 times as many citations. And the explanations of that are widely discussed. But I would say the comments of one person who does a lot of that work was that people in business have better problems. I think it's a great statement, and because it brings to clarity the notion that choosing the right problem is the guide to high impact research. And if you're an academic working just in your lab and just doing controlled experiments in your lab or survey studies, may produce interesting results, but when you get out with real users, then you know that you're doing something important because you get substantial feedback. So that's the story of New ABCs of Research, but that's where I've been. Today, we're here to take a bold view and look forward to the new directions. I call it a second Copernican revolution, and that notion is that the old model was that algorithms and AI were at the center of our thinking, and the humans were somehow in the loop around the algorithms and AI. But I think we're moving to a shift which puts humans at the center, human-centered, and AI and the algorithms circle them as needed. But human control and the focus on human values, human needs are what make this a revolution. So if I'm trying to say what is HCI, well, the key ideas revert to familiar notions of amplifying, augmenting, enhancing, and empowering people, giving people the tools they want to help them perform more effectively, have more satisfaction, work better, play better, improve their lives. Now, the way we're going to do that is we've already been doing that through astonishing improvements in human capabilities, just the availability of information through the web, the search capabilities of Google, Bing, and other tools. Email and text enable individuals to have powers that only kings and emperors used to have. For digital photography enables what used to be a small fraction of the population to make everyone a creative person who has power in those digital cameras. Navigation tools help us every day. Business formation and other tools are important. The essential message I have is that if we're going to make these AI tools available and they're going to really be effective in changing people's lives, they need to be reliable, safe, and trustworthy. Reliable, safe, and trustworthy. Reliable, safe, and trustworthy. That's what we need. At the same time, these tools will increase human self-efficacy, build on creativity, and clarify their responsibility. And also, of course, we want to make sure that these new technologies support human values, human rights, and dignity. And the AIS article, the link is down below. You can easily find that and follow up. I hope you'll take a look. Already in the few weeks that article's been out, has more than 700 downloads, and hope you'll take a look. That's quite a strong record for the AIS journal in such a short time. All right, so what I see is a future based on super tools, not intelligent agents or computers as our collaborators, or autonomous robots. I'm not into that. I believe in super tools. And super tools and active appliances are what I think of the future, and that's the language shift I want to change to. Also, the current cameras enable you to do remarkable things as you take photos. And it's a nice, it's appropriate integration of AI. The AI controls the aperture, the focus, and reduces hand jitter, and allows you to do remarkable pictures even under quite low light in difficult conditions. And then you can control what that image looks like. You can adjust it, you can mark it, you can change the shadows, the brightness, the color, the saturation, and many other things. It gives users control. That's the thing they want. I think we're after the idea of empowering users, not making machines that do their work for them. Similarly, navigation tools here between University of Maryland and College Park and the downtown Washington, it gives you a primary recommended route, and it gives you some alternatives, and it shows you what the different times it might take. That one's also 26 minutes, but this longer route takes only 25 minutes. And I've done this many times, and I'm always reluctant to take the long route because it has the disadvantage of more gas consumption. But there it is. If you are really in a rush, take the highway route rather than go through the town. Okay, that's the kind of information you get to allow you to make a decision. And of course, we're all familiar with text auto-completion for search and spelling correction. These are things that have become familiar. They're great assists that come from AI technology, but the user is in control. The user is in control. That's the message we want to provide. And then the active appliances. These, I think, are the models of the future, not a characterized robot standing around your kitchen and, you know, emptying dishes from your dishwasher. But I think these tools are increasingly powerful, and these simple control panels, or not always so simple, but the well-designed ones enable you to get what you need done. And I think that's the model we should be building on for future technologies. More advanced things, I think we should think about teleoperated devices, the Da Vinci robot. And in newspapers, headlines often feature on robots do better than humans. Nonsense. It's the humans who are doing the surgery. And the maker of the prime device, the Da Vinci Surgical Systems Company, says on their website, robots don't perform surgery. Your surgeon performs surgery with Da Vinci. Instruments that he or she guides via a console. That's the notion of the design that I propose. And then we see that even in what's celebrated as autonomous robots on the surface of Mars, well, there's a whole control room of people at NASA that are really operating it. Yes, it's a good blend because the robot is autonomous in the sense that it can avoid obstacles and precipices. It can manipulate the instruments and move around on the surface of Mars, but the overall control is still in the NASA control centers. And similarly, what we used to think of as an implanted cardiac pacemaker that operated autonomously, well, actually now, increasingly, we recognize that the right designs give users and clinicians control, and also allow supervision of thousands of pacemakers to understand what works and what doesn't work and how to constantly improve them. So that's where we're going. And I think the large screen visualizations, the Bloomberg terminal, that's why there are 300,000 users spend $20,000 a year at least to have this on their desk because it gives them the model they need for proper financial decision making. It's a spatially stable, non-overlapped window, tiled window that highlights information and organizes. Lots of AI behind the screens, but the user is in control, and that's what they want. Similarly, control centers for counterterrorism, police, transportation, and many other operations allow people to work together and provide them with large amounts of information. Okay, so I think that's where we're going. We see more medical and other applications here. And the question is, okay, if you're in it, if you buy into my notion, how do we get to do this? We see lots of discussions about responsible AI, ethical AI, and we want to see how to make that happen in practice. So this is a more elaborate notion, but this screen is a summary of the paper on bridging the gaps. It's one of the ones I mentioned. And here in the bottom, you can see the reference to it. It's described or summarized in the paper that's in AIS Transactions. The full paper is here in the ACM Transaction on Interactive and Intelligent Systems. So there's really three levels I want to discuss. At the level of the software engineering team, those who design and build systems, there are things that they can do. So each team has some obligation. Within each organization, those of you who are leaders of organizations or think about business management, the notion of a safety culture is becoming increasingly clear. It's not just a matter of making a few fixes in the lines of code. It's a matter of building a culture of safety in an organization. Hospitals have been working on this for years. Many organizations have joined in. I provide 5 guidelines or recommendations about how to do that. And then the outer circle is at the level of each industry, whether it's transportation or medical or military. Each industry has to do a set of things that will improve the quality and assure, as much as possible, the trustworthiness of these applications. And this requires independent oversight, the notion not only that the company is evaluating what it does, but that there are others outside it which give it a greater validity. So within the central core, the software engineering teams, there are 5 practices that I advocate. For this talk, I'll focus just on 2 of them and discuss those possibilities on audit trails and then explain the user interfaces. The audit trails notion is something that's built into every aircraft. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder are both notions that are audit trails. And I'm saying a flight data recorder for every robot or every AI system. And this is common practice in trading, in stock market trading platforms, where of course every trade is monitored. And so you do have a record of what happened. And if things go wrong, as they have occasionally, and the flash crashes, then you can do a retrospective analysis of the failures. That's the key thing, and that's what the National Transportation Safety Board has focused on with aircraft devices, aircraft flight data recorders, to be able to understand what goes wrong, and that's an important process. They also come to understand the near misses of what almost went wrong, but which good pilots or have saved aircraft from more serious problems. And those can become important lessons to influence others. The same principles would apply for every business, robot process automation, for example, and then the analysis to support preventive maintenance of aircraft, but to improve the quality of every system that we use. I think the further notion of extended audit trails are the notion of incident databases. And there's in the last few months, a growing interest in incident databases for AI. The Partnership on AI has established an AI incident database with 1,000 stories of failures of AI systems. Those are important to learn from, and those will be valuable for insurance companies and for consulting firms to understand, and for external auditing groups. The second notion, which is the widely discussed notion of explainable user interfaces or explainable AI, and my suggestion is that we need comprehensible user interfaces to prevent the need for explanations, rather than post hoc explanations, which can be very difficult to do, or retrospective explanations. Could be local or global, but those are difficult to construct, and the success with that is modest, I would say. By contrast, preventing that by prospective exploratory user interfaces, we can prevent confusion and surprise. Now, my simple example is a mortgage loan application where you might fill this in, and this is a standard post hoc or retrospective analysis. You put in the amounts, and you get a result, and the bank says, we're sorry, your mortgage loan was not approved. You might be approved if you reduce the mortgage amount requested, increase your household monthly income, or increase your liquid assets. Well, that's good, but not great. You don't quite know how much you have to change those, and it's not quite the full counterfactual explanations that are expected for systems where there's a good causal model. But we can give users that with an exploratory user interface rather than having to submit to the AI and then get an answer. Why not let the users control what happens? There's still a machine learning model in the background that does the approval or not, but the users have control and they can explore as they move the sliders left or right. They can see how their score goes up or down and how close they get to the score needed for approval. So I think while that's a simple example, it gives you an idea of what might be possible. The safety culture ideas, I think, are strong ones as well. There's a whole literature on leadership commitments to safety, hiring and training, reporting, strategies, and then collecting failures, and then aligning with industry standards. So there's lots to talk about there. And finally, I'm become a big advocate of independent oversight for industry through government regulations, which exist very successfully in many cases and don't necessarily inhibit innovation. In fact, the history of car safety and car fuel efficiency shows that government regulations have done huge amounts to stimulate innovation and improvements in automobile safety and efficiency. So there's three forms of independent oversight. There's planning oversight, there's continuous monitoring, and retrospective analysis of disasters. I'll take just a brief look at each of these three and we'll end up from there. So planning oversight is like a zoning board that has a builder comes and says, this is what I want to build. And the zoning board may give approval, the building gets built. There may be changes in the plans along the way. Then the building inspector comes by and approves it, gives them a certificate of occupancy, and then the insurance company says, okay, we will now insure you. And I think we'll see that for the large projects of mortgage approval, parole granting, or job hiring and firing, that organizations will present the idea in advance and will develop the strategy. This is what Microsoft's already doing through its Office of Responsible AI. Google has developed internal procedures as well, and IBM as well. We see these happening extremely quickly. In the past 3-4 months, these have improved dramatically with data sheets for data sets, AI fact sheets, explainability fact sheets. Now we're getting to see that human-centered activity pushing forward. The second form is continuous monitoring. Here, the Federal Reserve Board, which has monitors that check continuously with banks on their approvals for mortgage lending and other practices, credit granting, etc. And finally, the retrospective analysis, the well-known example of the National Transportation Safety Board. I think we'll see that in other industries as well. So that's my formula for the success. And the summary says, okay, we're after a second Copernican revolution. We're seeing it happen before our eyes month by month as the shift from the focus on AI and the measurement of the efficiency of the algorithm shifts to humans, human usability testing, and the focus on user performance, improving the performance of users through the use of AI systems. My message to you is that the goal is always to amplify, augment, enhance, and empower people. And this has already brought these astonishing improvements, but it will bring more. And we believe that reliable, safe, and trustworthy is possible. I'm now a member of a National Academy's panel for working for NIST about developing ways of evaluating trustworthiness of AI systems. So that's happening again very quickly. There's huge, broad international interest. My focus is on the human and promoting self-efficacy, creativity, and responsibility so that we support human values, human rights, and dignity. And the structure for this is a broad effort that will require at every level of development, management, and industry oversight, require a lot of effort, but we are beginning to see the outlines of how that will take place. And if you want to see more, my approach was featured in the New York Times on May 21st in a very nice article by John Markoff, which you can take a look at, or if you want more, the 4 papers, including the one in the AIS transactions on human-computer interaction, are here, and my website discussing it is listed on the bottom. I've made this set of slides available to AIS, and I hope Konstantinos will post them or make them part of, available to others. So I'm pleased to have had the chance to present to this community especially. I'm pleased to have followed Mary Cherwinski's very interesting, provocative talk, and I look forward to discussion and questions, and you can always reach out to me at the University of Maryland, ben@cs.umd.edu. Thank you. Thank you again, Konstantinos, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ben. And with that, I'm just like to see if Adeline would be able to clear the Q&A just to make it more easy for people to vote up questions of interest to you, because we still see the Q&A that was posted during Mary's talk. Let's see if that can be cleared up. It is wonderful. So I see the most, no, we still have a few from before. There are 3.
So one about how does AI make people more creative? Well, I think the AI tools, I think the digital camera is a great example because it gives users control. The user takes their camera, they turn it on, they can choose where they point to and what they will focus on. And then they have many controls about how the picture will be taken, what filters will go, the lighting, the focus are taken care of by AI algorithms, but you are in charge. It's your photo. You click and take the photo, and then you have a remarkable, I just astonished by the degree of control you have to alter the image after you've taken it, to increase or reduce the shadows, change the lighting, change the saturation, the brightness, the color, the contrast, and all those stem from algorithms that were just not possible 20 years ago. And they run on your phone, which is just this high performance platform. So these high performance platforms and the AI algorithms underneath, but it's user control in the lead.
So that's fantastic. And I'm thinking ahead to the next question that's been posed and already been upvoted quite a bit, and actually related to a question that I couldn't get to ask to Mary. So the question to you, Ben, is, it appears that you're still an opponent to anthro-machines, which is a little bit in tension with some of the findings that Mary spoke to. Given that our ability to design human-like devices now higher, how do we design to reduce our propensity to abdicate to machines?
Very good. No, I'm not opposed. I just don't think it makes any sense that humanoid robot designs and social robots that walk around and become our friends, collaborators, teammates, and partners have never succeeded. They have a long, long history of not gaining commercial success. And in the last year, at least 3 that I know of, these companies, Jibo, Anki, Cosmo, Kuri, all have failed. They've disappeared. And the humanoid robots in Japan have disappeared as well. Oh, yes, I know there are pet dog robots and that are charming and entertaining for a short period of time. But, if you want a functional robot, Roomba. I am a Roomba user, okay? And Roomba is not a anthropomorphic robot. It's a very well-designed, there's 30 million of them in use in the 30 years of the iRobot company, and it simply skitters around our apartment and cleans the floors in a very good way. So robots, if you want to call them robots, fine. Is your dishwasher and clothing washer a robot? Well, I'll call them a robot. They're very good, but they don't look at all like a person. The anthropomorphic design notion is a dead end as far as I can see. I will grant a great success for Alexa, Siri, Cortana, Google Home. These are not humanoid robots, but they use voice user interfaces. Very skillfully designed, a lot of AI behind them, and that's a good idea. But I don't consider them Anthropomorphic Robots. But I would say that was a very successful design space that combines human control, user control, and AI algorithms in a very good way to provide information. So that's where I see it going. I would rather use the word super tools and active appliances. That's where I think we're going. And if you want to argue more, I'm happy to talk about it. I would say Mary Cherwinski's talk did not have anthropomorphic robots. It provided users with guidance about their performance in their meetings. Very, I think appropriate intervention. So I'm supportive of that as well.
So there was a subtle reference to more human-like agents. And if we were to pivot and consider the context of companionship, so more of a hedonic, not so much utilitarian, very different context, and even look at futurists who anticipate that in 50 years' time, with the advancements in AI and the social challenges or constraints that may exist for individuals to have a meaningful personal relationship, would that perhaps augment your position, or?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. I know it's a fantasy for some people, but they believe this is going to happen, and they think it's inevitable even. It's a very strong community. I am a minority. You should know that. I am, as I said, Copernicus had a hard time bringing his revolution forward, and I will have a hard time. There will be resistance to this notion as well. But I don't see a presence for that. I think rather than that, elder care will not be done by companion robots, but elder care needs to be done by people, and providing better active appliances for people who are living at home or in adult centers. Instead of having a robot, there's an example of a robot comes to your table, cleans away the dishes, puts them in the dishwasher, and then brings them back to the table. Well, I don't think that's going to work, but I do think if you would build a very small dishwasher into the dining table or next to the dining table or under it, which had room for just 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 bowls, and 8 utensils, then a person living alone or a couple could actually use that and do it themselves. It's the independence, the self-efficacy. They want a wheelchair that they can get around with, not something that does it for them. So I don't see a future for social robots. I do see a future for human companionship and ways of bringing people closer together and celebrating and rewarding those who do help and care for older adults.
I love the conviction. And the next question, by the way, is one that relates, but it's a different angle. So what would your thoughts be about humans having some relational or social relationships or emotions toward AI? So basically more relational focused AI as opposed to task focused AI.
It's inevitable. As Cliff Nass and his many studies, students show that computers as social actors, CASA, is a natural thing. We anthropomorphize our cars, our boats, and other devices. We talk about them, and that's okay. It's okay for a user to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not okay for a designer to build a humanoid form. They're welcome to do it, but I don't see any commercial success. And the history of failures, if you're going to do it, at least study the history of failures, okay? And in the paper that's in the IEEE version, the IEEE paper, it talks about the history or part of the history of failures. But I think you have to be cautious and understand why humanoid robots, the postal buddy, and the Tilly the teller, the bank tellers, all those have disappeared because consumers don't really want them. They want to get their work done. They want to get their $60 cash out of the bank machine, and they don't need a chat with a deceptive chat with a deceptive bank teller persona. I mean, the question then becomes, if the bank is trying to deceive me here, how else are they trying to deceive me? And it undermines the trust that's necessary between people and the trust in organizations. So if you've got a different example, please let me know. I'm looking for examples that succeed, but I must say there's not one. Now there are, pet robots, Paro, the seal, there's a bunch of pets, Ibo the dog, and other cheaper and furry dogs that they're entertaining. The studies, there are about 50 studies of these in elder care homes. They're every one of those 50 I've looked at and others have looked at are short-term use, the first week or so. And during that time, people enjoy them. They're entertaining, no doubt. It's fun. I like them too. They're cute. They're clever. But, what makes them attractive to people in old age homes is it's a chance and a reason to talk to their friends. That's what they really want. They want human connection. And that's what we have to remember is central. And that's what makes people happier and healthier. I hope there would be long-term studies. And I certainly, if someone wants a robot furry pet, I won't stop that, but I'll be interested to see if those are durable success stories. I haven't seen one. If you know of one, please send me. I really am eager to understand success.
There was an example of the opposite actually in the chat, the failure of Clippy.
The failure of Clippy, of course, is famous, but there are many others. The failure of Ananova, the failure of the Postal Buddy, Tilly the Teller, Microsoft Bob, it goes on.
Wonderful. Then on the next question, a little bit different focus. Could you talk about any use cases of the emotional interventions in the work context that you experiment with or applied during the pandemic, if there is any?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think Mary's talk was really good. I've known her for a long time, followed her work, but this was new effort, and her meeting coach seemed to be an interesting idea. And there have been previous studies, Sandy Pentland and MIT's study of meetings are very helpful. If you provide feedback to the people in the meetings, and it's not a robot, but just, it's essentially a better sensor that tells them what percent of the time they spoke or other people spoke, how many times they were interrupted or they interrupted others. That could help people change their own behaviors. And so I think that's a valuable thing. And the evidence is quite nice. I like Sandy Pentland's work. It's a little old now, but I think it's durable, that meetings in which there's balanced participation produce the most productive results. And so forceful leaders who control the floor actually limit discussion, reduce creativity, and make for an unhappy work environment. So, it changed my behavior those days. So I make sure when I'm meeting with a group of students and there's been a lively discussion, I look around the room and I invite those who have not spoken to speak up. And it builds their participation in the group. It makes everyone aware that they have a role to play. One of the online groups I participate with now during this pandemic at the University of British Columbia is the research group of Tamara Munzner on information visualization. There are 8 or 9 of us, and she does a very nice job of making sure every week we read a paper or do something else, and that everybody gets to speak. And that's kind of, that builds a sense of participation in the community.
Wonderful. Thank you.
What else?
On a different topic again, what is your vision to effectively resolve the uncertainty and unpredictability issues of using dynamic AI technologies to interact with users? Yes,
that uncertainty is dangerous, especially in self-driving cars and so on. Predictability is a necessary attribute for successful systems. So if systems become unpredictable, if your self-driving car, once a month, it just doesn't start. It doesn't want to start. It doesn't want to go there. That's not okay. Once a month, it takes you not to your workplace, but it takes you to 10 blocks away, parks the car perfectly, and says it's done. And those kind of, even once a month or less, if they don't do what's happened, you will not use them. They just are not reliable, safe, and trustworthy. So they're gone. If you can't reduce uncertainty, shut it down. And so some of those problems, and that's why, for example, machine learning techniques and deep learning are not used in cockpits in aircraft because the uncertainty inhibits the acceptance for the pilots. The autopilots are quite predictable when they're well designed. Now, what happened with the Boeing 737 MAX tells you a further example of how deadly unpredictability is. The designers believed they could have a fully reliable autonomous system, okay? They believed it so strongly, they did not tell the pilots that this system was in place. And the IBM guidelines is very clear. It says invisible AI is unethical AI, okay? And if the pilots are not really in charge, they'll shut it down. If they don't understand why it's done something, they'll shut it down. And the tragedies of the two 737 MAX crashes was that a failed sensor gave the control system incorrect reading. The control system pointed the nose down. The pilots repeatedly tried to pull up 20 times in the minutes before the plane ultimately crashed. They did not understand because they did not know what was going on. So uncertainty is deadly. And for AI systems, we're going to have to learn how to make them as predictable as possible.
Great. And then one last question here. Because we're running out of time, because the questions keep coming, by the way. Same thing, we can connect offline. How do you handle just-in-time intervention with your users using your app? Or was that maybe submitted from before?
I'm not sure what kind of just-in-time interventions.
No, I think this was probably over a question from the previous group, from Mary's session. So there is another question for you, though. Do you believe there will be some innovations that will be reliable, safe, and trustworthy and still not be used, perhaps, due to the spread of misinformation around the world?
I think that's possible. So we have the case with the COVID vaccine. We know that the current vaccines are 90 or 95% reliable. Is that good enough? And is that good enough? And then misinformation will spread that will discourage people from taking that vaccine. So some decisions are difficult because there is inherent uncertainty of knowledge about it and unpredictability. But yet the benefits are so strong of a vaccine that we will risk it. But it may not be reliable, but it is safe as far as we know. So that makes it a lot better. It may not be 100% effective in stopping COVID, but it is, for the moment, we understand it to be safe. So that's good. Remember, the Food and Drug Administration's requirements are safe and effective. By effective, I think similar to the notion of reliable. So yes, we need to do our best to make the technologies we design as safe and reliable as possible. We need to communicate that effectively. And then, yes, we will have to deal with misinformation, adversarial attacks of many kinds, and efforts to undermine that. We should understand that these kind of attacks and misinformation are really possible and do our best to limit those. That is a challenge for the coming decades, absolutely. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak, and please email to me, ben@cs.umd.edu, if you wish to follow up. I hope you'll take a look at the paper in the AIS, Transactions on Human-Computer Interaction, the current issue, volume 12, number 3. And appreciate your commenting on that for me. I'm at work, hard at work, on turning that into a book. My deadline is March 1st, and the book will appear late in 2021. It takes that long to produce a book, but that's where my attention is going. Thank you again.
Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Again, you were with us more recently than Mary was for her last time, but it's always a pleasure to have you with us again. And I will send a follow-up email with a couple of questions also that came, but we didn't have enough time. To our full workshop participants, let me start by reminding everyone that we'll need to go back to the previous link for the last session of the day, and that is we'll begin with updates from the board. So the business meeting, it's a very short meeting, about 15, 20 minutes at most. And we'll be concluding with all the awards. So we're saving the best for last this time. We do have to get the housekeeping items first out of the way, and then we'll conclude with the awards. We have a special feature in plan, a surprise for that. So we hope to see you at the 3:30 business meeting / awards, workshop awards segment. And again, it's back at the previous URL. Thank you so much for participating in the keynote session.